Greetings, I'm on chess.com going through the chess engine. Today I'm at 1600. I'm doing a series where I just go through these. I've done a series where I've gone through different personalities, and so sometime back I switched up a little bit and from doing puzzles and some of those personalities, and I went through the engine and I went through 14, 15, 17, and I'm uh, done the games for like 18 and 1900, but I realized I skipped over 1600. So with 1600, there's going to be some good chess fundamentals and the ending. I hope you stick with me to the ending because there's a knight-queen ending combo using the queen and the knight together that I really want to show the audience. So let's get to it. Computer says I played at 88.1%. I played the black pieces and the 1600 ELO engine played at 81.5. And so let's get to this here. So I responded with D6. It was D4, D6 opening. And so here I use this. I just want to stop and point this out for just a little bit. In the beginning, you want to try to, excuse me, control the center and develop your pieces. You should start with developing your minor pieces. And the computer knows better than I do, but called this a little bit of inaccuracy. But I use this opening quite a bit, even in the low 2000 ELOs. I use this same opening. And so, you know, at this level, just try out what you're comfortable with, and you know, have fun with it, of course. And so, anyway, I just wanted to point that out. There is a little bit of a danger that I'm getting ready to show you. So, I've got one minor piece developed, and so now my opponent and I are trying to control the center. And this right here, I've played it both ways. Where I've pushed this up or I've done it this way. The computer says this was good, but the best move would have been to take this bishop to e7. And I'll show you why. I was expecting a take and then it'd be check, and then I have to recapture with my king and I lose my right to castle. But if I had this bishop sitting here, then I could recapture with the bishop and not lose my right to castle. The 1600 made an inaccuracy by not doing, you know, what I was explaining there earlier. So, and again, the computer says this is a bit of an inaccuracy because I had a chance to develop a minor piece this night, and this would control the center a little better if the knight was sitting here. I mean, you know, it would control a lot of squares, specifically around the center. But I do have something in mind with placing the bishop here, and I will show you here in just a second. We'll get to it. Okay, so there's a, you know, take exchange of the bishops. And so now I take the queen and it's check, and it has to be dealt with. And it is. And so I figured after all that it would leave a key pawn open for the taking. So that's what I've done. And now I normally like to castle as soon as possible, specifically before the 10th move. And you know, I've already went past that, but that's okay. Here's what I want to show you is when I take this bishop and now my opponent has to take back, I'm only up one pawn, but the key advantage that I have is my opponent has a double stack pawn and they're isolated. So especially as we close out this opening, I like to be just up something, you know, even if it's just a pawn or my opponent has an isolated pawn or a double stack pawn and I don't, just anything to give me a little bit of an advantage to the mid game. Now we're not quite to the mid game yet because I still have minor pieces that need to be developed. And so now so now at this point I castled. And like I said, trying to get these pieces into the game. Yeah, here I thought about that. I could have gone here if it was take. I could take back with my knight, but I didn't want my knight to get out of the center. Now, there is one danger that I have to watch for, and this is one of the takeaways that I want the audience to understand is I have a piece here, I have a minor piece and a major piece. If I know it can't do it now, but chess is all about future ideas. If this pawn was ever to get out of the way and my opponent's bishop's here, I got pieces lined up, and you know, if I move that knight somewhere, this rook is gone. So this is something that I have to be very mindful. So when you're playing chess, look for these types of things. Look for future ideas. Okay. So let's get to it. And I thought about going there, but it's the same idea. The computer says, yeah, I wanted to attack this. The computer says it would have been best from this angle. And okay, I'll try to learn from that. That's why I review these games. But okay. So kind of the same idea. There's some things here. Let's try to attack that. Things lined up down this diagonal. So I want to own that diagonal. Okay. So I wanted to protect that pawn, and so that's why I went there. Okay, so here now I don't have anything to defend my bishop. So having said that, I wanted to go ahead and do the exchange. Yeah, I mean, I could have moved my knight and then protect that spot, but again, I liked my knight sitting more towards the center of the board. And at 1600, if you just play good chess fundamentals, then you'll win. Watch out for traps and just do good fundamentals, and that's kind of the key. Okay, so here, now I want to point this out. I didn't think taking this rook was a bad move, and it wasn't. As the computer says it was good, but it wasn't the best. And the reason why is, the end game, you want to get your king out towards the center. Sometimes people have a tendency to hide their king away, but get your king out there, and your king's going to have to go to work at the end of the game. And so this is the same situation. I'm trying to protect this pawn. Computer says I blundered here, and that's fair. I can accept that. I should have moved the king first, because the king, even in this position, can still defend this pawn. So like I said, towards the end game, the engine is looking for you to get your king out towards the center. Okay, so we got a little bit of exchange there. So every once in a while I like to stop and let's just take a look at what we got. So I have one minor, my opponent has one minor, I have one major piece, my opponent has one major piece, and I am up one pawn. But my pawn structure looks a little better because of this isolated pawn. So, and this is also isolated up against the board. So that gives me a slight advantage. And that slight advantage will add up, as you'll see. So now this rook is pretty much trapped in here, because now I'm attacking, and what my opponent does is says, well, instead of just walking out here empty-handed, I'll at least take a pawn, because if the rook comes here, this knight owns this position. If the rook hops up here, I'm just going to come chasing after with the king, and that's why it's important you get the king out and get it going. So this rook was going to be pretty much cut off, not pretty much, but absolutely cut off at this point. And so that's why it decided to go ahead and at least take a pawn. Now I have a way, this I'm looking to promote to a queen. When you see this situation, you usually want your major pieces under your pawn so that you can promote it. There's another thing you can do, is I could hop over here, and then this rook would own this open D file here, cutting off the king, and then eventually leading to promoting the queen. However, I did not choose that way because there's still a knight on the table here. So the knight could do some damage. So I'm not quite ready to take that approach where I just cut off the king. So that's why I decided just to get underneath the minor piece and promote it. And so that's what I start to do. And then now this knight is blocking this. So this is kind of cool because my opponent has a knight, but it's tied up defending this. So I could go off, and it's almost as if you traded a pawn for a knight, because this pawn is kind of frozen because it's like, well, I don't want you to have a queen, so my knight has to stay here and guard this square. Is you know, kind of the mindset. Now I'm free to move about if that's what I choose to do. And so I'm looking to get rid of that situation so that I can get my queen. So if this knight wants to take, I'll just take back, and soon I'll have a queen. So that's kind of what I was hoping for, but hope is a terrible strategy. And so here, you know, I'm not going to take any chances. I'm going to play good, clean pawn, or chess, and watch out for this pawn. So I'm going to go ahead and take it, and at the same time it's check, so it has to be dealt with. And now I've got this knight far from the problem that I originally had. Oh, now here, there is something to watch out for. So I'm attacking the knight. I'm back in check. And what my opponent was wanting me to do was go to this square. And the reason why is because my opponent was wanting to come here, which would have been check. Whoops. Sorry, let me redraw that. Okay, so my opponent wanted me to go here so that the white pieces could go here, which would be check. And as soon as I move, they're going to pick up my rook. So you have to be aware of that. So one easy way is, you know, if the knight is on a green square or a dark square, you know, it can only hop to a white square. So, and if it's on a white square, it can't put you in check. So that's why I chose to hop to a white square, so that I could put it into this constantly being put in check. So, and now it's attacking my rook. And this, yeah, I realize it looks like a mistake, and the computer still says it was a good move, but I'm just playing very conservative at this point. And now there's no major pieces, there's only one minor piece, and it's mine. And I'm about to have a queen, so I want to eliminate any future threats. And so that's why I did that. And there's my queen. And here I took with my king because even though it's looking very promising for me, let's not take any chances, I didn't want an isolated pawn. And this puts my king closer to the center. I do have, you know, one thing to watch out for, where my opponent is going to want to try to queen. And I've had lots of games where I should have won it, and I got sloppy and wasn't playing good fundamental chess and ended up losing. So something to be very careful about. So I want to get my king over there is what I was trying to do, just to really stop that promotion. So there we go. Okay. So now I'm going to show you, there's a couple different ways. If you've seen some of my other videos, I talk about where I make a box for my opponent's king. Now I do realize I actually own all this too, and where my opponent can only just kind of hop around in this box that I created, and I work it smaller and smaller. And I thought about using my queen and pushing this king to the back rank, in this situation, first rank from white's perspective, and start bringing this king into the game slowly, and using the queen and the king together. That's what I usually do. But because I had a knight and a queen, I wanted to do a knight-queen combo. Not just for the audience, but also for myself, because this does happen, and using the knight and the queen together isn't always as easy as it appears. And so I thought this would be good practice for me and a good thing to teach with. So now you want to be careful. I do realize that my opponent still has one more movement with the pawn that it can happen. But my opponent at this in this position is going to look for a stalemate, so we have to be careful. So you have to stop and look and say, okay, with the queen, I own these squares, and I own this square. So the king cannot move, and so if I go there, it's now checked because that knight owns these squares here, and so that's mate. So I hope that helps. The biggest takeaway from this is at 1600, it's very respectable ELO, but play good clean chess. Look at every pieces. Look at what squares you own, what squares you will own in the future, and remember about those future ideas. Think about those future ideas. That's the key. And just prepare yourself for a nice end game where you have just a little bit of an advantage. And if you like this, leave me a comment below and let me know what you think. I'd be curious to know, especially about that opening. I like that opening. Computer says there's a little bit of an inaccuracy, but I use it all the time. Leave a comment below, let me know, and thanks for watching. Have a great day.